Well, hello everybody. We are at Kenilworth Road for a birthday edition of the Gary Neville podcast. And Gary, your special day ended with a Manchester United win, but not without its scrapes.
No, I thought they would win today, genuinely. I thought that they usually are flat track bullies against sort of the teams that get promoted. I think they've won the last 11 ties against teams that have been promoted, and they do normally do well against the bottom half of the table team. So coming here today, I did expect them to win. I was looking before the game for performance, because I think that more than as much as results, I think what everyone's going to want to see in this next 3 months is Manchester United develop patterns of play and a real sort of performance level that demonstrates consistency. So that's what I was looking for today. In the first 10 minutes, they were breathtaking. I mean, really, really good. How I would like Manchester United to play. So exciting on the counter-attack, precise but also direct and sort of really going for the throat. Højlund looked like, and I didn't say it on commentary, but he looked like a sort of, Haaland in the making. Just power and strength and that aggression in his running that I really love about a Manchester United centre forward. I've always liked it. So it was a good 10 minutes and a really good start to the game, but they do have a habit of then just stepping off, and it'll really frustrate Erik ten Hag.
So how do you rationalise that? How do you rationalise what happened once the lead was 2-0?
Look, I mean, you play away from home in football matches. In the Premier League, the team that's playing at home ordinarily does have a period of play. But what I would have expected is that Manchester United added one of two things when they went 2-0 up. They had to keep the ball and try and dominate possession and sort of draw Luton out, or they sit back in a little bit and say, come on, you're the ones that are desperate now, and they go and counter-attack on them. And they got caught a little bit in between. And what I would say is that they have got some young players, up front. Højlund, Garnacho, Matt Rashford's not young, but Mainu in midfield. But it wasn't just them, it was Fernandes, Casemiro and Rashford as well. They really became wasteful on the ball and started giving it away as they were playing out. And I'll come on to speak about Chelsea last night and how difficult it is to play against Manchester City out when they're trying to put that counter-press on you. And your first pass has got to be really good, and you've got to know where your players are, and then you've got to have quick support. It's not easy to counter-attack from one end of the pitch to the other, and Luton were pressing forward, really punching hard at United. So United got sloppy in their play after they went 2-0 up. And credit to Luton, the way they play the game, it's front foot. I've got a lot of time for them. They're not just a kick and hoof it team, which obviously sometimes we think of Luton being very direct. We know the stats say that. But for United, they just don't seem to be able to put together a real sort of what would be, I think professional is the right word, performance. I thought actually the second half was more professional, but in the first half, for 25 minutes, they just lost their discipline. They started giving fouls away. They had two players booked that were so close to red cards they needed to be taken off. So it was a scruffy first half after such a brilliant start, and I'm not quite sure why we have these sort of huge peaks and troughs, not just from game to game, but within games, and not just within games, but within halves of games. We just see huge sort of fluctuations in performance, and that's the frustrating bit, because they can be really good when they're good, and they can be breathtaking when they play in 5-10 minute periods, but then it seems to just dip.
But it's a not dissimilar conversation to the one we had at Villa Park exactly a week ago, isn't it? And I suppose from the point of view of a Manchester United supporter, the fact is they're winning games at the moment, despite their imperfections, which has got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Well, at half-time, I read out an Instagram story post to you from an old colleague of mine, Paul Scholes, and people may have seen it, may not have seen it. I screenshot it. I said last week that Manchester United win games a lot, but don't tend to play well. And the post goes something like, they're a weird team, United. Reckon they could be the only team that could win 5-0 and get hammered. And it's a bit like that. It's just, I don't know what it is, because, we said the same thing last week at Villa. We'll probably be saying the same thing next week or the week after. And it's got to stop that. It has got to stop, because they've got it in them to play better.
In fairness, you were saying in the second half, and it was the evidence of our eyes, they could very comfortably have put the game to bed, couldn't they?
I thought the second half was a lot better than the first, and they didn't score a goal in the second half because it's more measured. I'm not sure what Erik ten Hag will say, but to me that was a more considered performance in the second half, more measured. I think actually Evans and Varane looked very composed at the back, and in midfield they looked like they had more sort of play and they took control of the game. They had one-on-ones. They had four big chances. I mean, you threw on goal on the goalkeeper. Well done to Kaminski. I thought he did really well. But Fernandes had one, Højlund had one, and did Garnacho have two, or did Fernandes have two? No, Fernandes had two, Garnacho had one, and Højlund had one. So they've gone to the right players. You want those players to have them. But they just couldn't finish Luton off. And yeah, that can happen sometimes. But I thought the second half was a lot better. I thought the football was a lot better. They had a lot of corners. I thought what they did in the second half really well was defend their box well. I actually think that Dalot does really well. I think Varane and Evans did really well in the second half, defending set pieces. They must have had 5 within the last 5 minutes, corners from this side. And Johnny Evans, I think, cleared 3 of them. Bruno Fernandes cleared 1 or 2. So what I think they did was in a ground. I always think we should have a ground like this in the Premier League. You know, a ground where you think this is like sort of back to the olden days, where it's a little bit up and at 'em, feels like an old FA Cup tie. And Manchester United and the top teams around them should always have to come to a ground like this, and it's a test of their mettle, how they defend set pieces and cope with it. I think they actually really have done well in the second half, United, in coping with the balls into the box, because there weren't really many chances that Luton had, so they defended well in the second half. They kept the ball better. The bit that was missing in the second half was just the finishing, because yeah, they had 4 or 5 big chances where they should have killed the game.
So before we move on to Chelsea-Manchester City, which is a chunky one to get into, just a final word on Luton in the context of the bottom there. Basically, they've got to reel in Everton or Forest or Palace or maybe just Brentford. Where do you see them?
I think they can be really proud tonight. I think last week's more of a problem for them, getting beat at home by Sheffield United. That's the one that will sting. If you'd have said out of these 2 matches you'll get 3 points, they'd have snapped your hand off. I think this is the game that I would have expected United to have won today, and they have won. Luton have done well in the game. I actually thought they gave their all, they gave their maximum. I don't think there was any United fan or Luton fan that have watched this and think the home team have left anything sort of, if you like, out on the pitch. They haven't done. What they lacked was that bit of quality that you need in the final third to open up a team that have got experienced defenders, and they just didn't have it. And they were really sort of scruffy in their final pass, their final cross. Even Doughty on this left-hand side, who's good at crossing the ball. You know, he overhit them a few times. Ogbeni on the other side did as well. So I think Rob Edwards will be really disappointed in the second half with the fact that they haven't caused Onana more problems. But I think he'll also recognise that Manchester United have big chances and deserve to win today.
Sure. So let's go on to Chelsea-Man City from last night, which was just a terrific game, I thought. Gary, what did you see in it? What conclusions have you drawn?
I really enjoyed it. You know, I really enjoyed it because there's very few times that you watch Manchester City play where a team has the nerve and courage to play out. I've always said that when you play against Manchester City, the most important time obviously is transition, when they give the ball away, the rare time they do. If you give it them straight back, you're in for a long, long day. And sometimes you will give the ball back to them. But if you can pass out quickly and get in, close support of each other, and I thought Chelsea did that really, really well. I thought that Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Conor Gallagher, they show real guts. And you need that against Manchester City when you're playing there, because not many teams get a point off them. Not many teams beat them there, let alone, get a point off them. They win. They beat everybody nearly. So for me, I was really impressed with Chelsea. I watched them obviously on Monday night at Crystal Palace. They were awful in the first half, terrible. But I put that down really to the shape that they were playing. Once they got the shape right in the second half, and they put Cole Palmer just towards the right-hand side, which is what they did last night, they did really well. Without Thiago Silva, with Disasi and Colwill, what it allows them to do is be a bit more aggressive, a bit more punch one-on-one defensively. I mean, Thiago, I love him as a player. I couldn't speak more highly of him. But the way in which Maurizio Pochettino needs and wants to take this team is to get up the pitch, to press, to really win the ball high. In Conor Gallagher, he has somebody who can win the ball in midfield, and the other two. At the back, Disasi and Colwill are aggressive. They'll make mistakes. They're young defenders. Gusto, really like him. Got to keep Chilwell fit. Because that's important on that left-hand side. But last night looked like the makings of a team for Chelsea, something you can build on, and they demonstrated that a few times. Maybe obviously a top-class centre-forward, maybe another addition sort of at the back, and you might be somewhere near to sort of in a year or so where those players grow and get a bit more confidence, that it'll be the style that Maurizio Pochettino wants to play. So I thought it was a really good game for Chelsea, but I also thought that Manchester City were really good in the second half as well. And I think in any other day, Manchester City still win that game. So I don't come out of that game saying, oh, the title's back on and it's this and it's that. Because I thought City, to be fair, with Haaland's chances in the last 25, 30 minutes, in any other week, they win 3-1 and we're saying, here we go, City have won again. I just think that the fact that Chelsea got that little bit of good fortune, that Haaland had an off day. So I don't think at the end of the game it was a bad one for City, or necessarily a bad one for Chelsea, because obviously they were sort of, they may have thought that they could have won. I just thought it was a really intriguing game, but demonstrated what you have to do against Manchester City if you're going to do anything in a game, and that is you've got to win the ball back, and when you win the ball back, you've got to pop it about really quickly and run forward. And that way then you can beat the press, which is tough. It's easy saying it up here, it's tough to do it in reality.
Just to continue on Chelsea, a couple of weeks ago, after the semi-finals and ahead of next week's final, most people, I think, onlookers would say no chance against Liverpool. And it feels, because of their improvement, as though that narrative has changed. I think it was the last day of January, they got heavily beaten at Anfield.
Yeah.
How do you feel the context of the League Cup final has changed now?
No, I think it's game on. And Liverpool fans, Liverpool players, Liverpool coaches will be looking at that Chelsea performance, not even just yesterday. They'll just naturally think Chelsea have got some players who can step up and deliver. And it's a big game for Chelsea, but it's also a big game for Liverpool. I mean, we don't know. Nunez went off at half-time yesterday, didn't he? And Jota went off as well.
And Jones.
And Jones went off. I didn't see Jones go, but I left. Was that near the end? Or was that, when was that?
Second half, I think.
Well, yeah, I left to go to watch Salford at 3. When Liverpool score a 3, I just tend to switch off, to be honest. It's hard watching. No, they played really well, Liverpool. But, when Nunez goes off, when Jota goes off, then you think to yourself, Trent Alexander-Arnold's not playing, then they're a little weaker than they would like to be. And Jurgen Klopp was thinking, how many injuries am I going to get? But Liverpool are favourites next week, let's be clear. But Chelsea got a real chance. And what they showed yesterday is that when a team push up the pitch, which Liverpool do, obviously City do it, that they can counter-attack and be really dangerous. In fact, it suits Chelsea. Jackson needs space to run into. Sterling needs space to run into. Palmer likes to deliver passes into space. I think Chelsea find it maybe a little bit harder, like they did in the first half against Crystal Palace the other night, when they just didn't look to have any idea against what would be a team that was sat 10 behind the ball at the edge of their own box. That's where Chelsea, I think, struggle more. So I think it's game on. I think it'll be a really good game. I'm really looking forward to it. And Liverpool will know they're in for a game.
And of course, Liverpool won big yesterday, Arsenal won big yesterday. As you say, City dropped points, but if you played that game 10 more times, they'd probably win it 9, because Haaland would score. So you've got, as it were, nothing fresh to say in terms of developments in the title race.
No, look, it's a good weekend for Arsenal and Liverpool, because they've dropped points, City, that you wouldn't expect them to drop points. But I'm not sat here thinking, City looked rocky, City looked off it, City looked like they might be going backwards. No, that was a game that City, to be fair, in any other week would win 3 or 4-1 with the chances that they created. So maybe sometimes you need that little bit of luck. Arsenal, they shouldn't get carried away, Arsenal. I said it last week, exactly the same, composure, they're doing all the right things, they're hitting form at the right time. Still a long way to go, obviously, but they're in a decent place. If you said to Mikel Arteta at the start of the season, this is where we'd be. If you said to Jurgen Klopp at the start of the season, this is where we'd be, both of them would have said, yeah, I'll take that.
So, listen, one more little curiosity before we finish. I wonder what you think about Nottingham Forest appointing a referee officer.
Honestly, I think, for a start, I think in the last 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we haven't talked too much about VAR. I mean, the odd decision here and there, but it's actually got a lot better in the last 5 or 6 weeks. There haven't been that many sort of what would be decisions that have been that bad, in my opinion. I mean, every team will whinge when they get a bad decision. We used to whinge all the time. But what is Mark Clattenburg doing? Obviously, I've worked with Mark. What are you doing? You've been employed to go and tell a football club how referees are making mistakes or what mistakes they're making. I mean, it's plainly obvious. I mean, a fan in the crowd could go and tell you exactly what a referee's thinking. The intent behind what a referee is thinking or an official is thinking is usually 99% there. So I'm disappointed with Nottingham Forest. It's as if they look at all this, woe me. And look, I get it. Some teams feel as though they've been hard done to. Some teams feel as though they've had bad decisions against them. That happens sometimes during the season. I would have hated it. You're speaking to someone who would have been furious if we had one bad decision against us, let alone 3 or 4. But to employ an ex-referee to tell you why you're having decisions against you, for me, I think is a step too far. This is not an attack on Nottingham Forest fans, because I think some of them will probably think it's embarrassing. They won't like the decisions against them, but I'm sure they won't sit there and think that's a really good move by the club to get to employ someone to tell us where our decision. I mean, Forest fans themselves can say where it's going wrong. So no, I don't like it. I think that this season there has been a you could argue refereeing standards at times have dipped, and there's been some shocking decisions, but I suspect that's been in every season since sort of football started. But it would seem the club's approach to referees has changed, that they almost want recourse, they want revenge, they want something to happen. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like in the past when you had a referee, you said, oh, I hope we don't get him again. Knowing full well, you weren't asking for his job, you weren't asking for him to be sacked. Now we're asking for sort of what would be things to happen. Clubs are writing letters, they're employing refereeing analysts to sort of tell them where they've gone wrong. I mean, we're going too far. Maybe we're going too far as well, but I just feel, to me, the clubs are not helping because they've got real power, they've got real authority, they have real standing in the game, and what they do is not just opinion, it's fact. And that's really damaging, I think, towards refereeing. And, you know, I say sometimes I look back in my career at some of the things that I did with real embarrassment. So I'm not sat here sort of like poacher term gamekeeper, because I know some of the things that, you know, I and my colleagues did during our careers were bad against referees. But you look back with experience and reflect, you don't expect clubs, you know, players in the heat of the moment that are passionate about winning. I get it. They want to know why a referee's decision's gone against them. They desperately think that they've been hard done to. But for clubs in the cold light of day, to me, it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see whether it makes any sort of concrete difference, regardless.
No. Oh, I can guarantee it won't.
Oh.
I mean, it's like writing a letter. What difference is it going to make? You can get an apology from a referee, from the referee supremo, Howard Webb. You can get an apology, but even that is not going to help. You know, the fact of the matter is, I can tell you, as clear as night is day, there will be a bad decision next week, and there'll be one the week after, and there'll be a club that feels like that they've had something go against them. That just is football. It's been like that since day dot. It just has. Anyway.
That's football. That's football.
I've got to get into the studio and try and resurrect the fact that I didn't recognise Harry Styles before the game, because I've never seen him dress. He dressed so smartly. I say, he walked in with the Luton Town owners, and I thought he was actually one of the director's sons. He looked like he was a... Yeah.
Did he recognise you?
No.
Well,
no. And not that I wouldn't want him to recognise me, but he's a United fan, so he may have done. But, oh, God, I'm totally embarrassed. I'm shocked. My two girls will be horrified, mortified with me.
But dads are embarrassing.
We are.
We all know that.
And especially this dad, who's got a lot older today as well.
Yeah, correct.
I'm allowed on my birthday. I'm really sorry, Harry. I really am.
Gary Neville, welcome to your 50th year. Thank you.
Yeah, 50th. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.